Let's cook together today. And we're not going to do an Umbrian rural recipe, as I often do. We're going to do a recipe that comes from southern Italy. This is a recipe invented for me by very good Neapolitan friends, Giuseppe and Salvatore. And I think one time on a visit to them, it was Giuseppe who made this delightful pasta with tomatoes and walnuts. And here's the ingredients we'll need. Baby tomatoes, cherry tomatoes, nice and ripe, nice and firm. Garlic. This is garlic that my husband Pino grew. This is our own garlic. These are not our tomatoes yet because we're here in July and tomatoes for us will be ripe in August, maybe sooner since it's been so hot this summer. Giuseppe used diced walnuts of Sorrento. Those are the most famous walnuts in Italy. These are diced walnuts of Anna and Pino's tree just out back behind our farmhouse. And today I'm going to have a little experiment. I'm going to use walnuts, and my favorite gift when anyone visits us from the United States, they ask me, what can I bring you? It's pecans. They don't grow in Italy. And also our Italian friends enjoy them very much. And they're absolutely wonderful when making things like nut breads with our persimmons and so forth. So I'm going to add a few pecans actually. And then basil, very fresh, picked from our garden. I have it in my little vase of San Giorgio. I'm a San Giorgiaro. During the Cherry Festival in Gubbio in May 15th, when there's a race. San Giorgio. So our basil is in my sacred little San Giorgio vase. Very simple is this recipe, as you'll soon see. Well, let's go out to our garden and we'll pick some fresh basil because we're going to need a little bit more. Here we go. Through the kitchen, this beautiful arch here connects to what was once the chicken coop. This kitchen, by the way, was once our wine cellar before Pino restored this house. Let's go out to the garden. We'll just go, not to our vegetable garden, but just out the door to the herbs. We have basil, rosemary, sage, thyme, marjoram, right out the door. We're passing our sheepdog. She's a Marimano sheepdog, Selva. Selva, you enjoying the cool weather today? The heat's gone down. And here's our basil. Beautiful basil we have this year. I'm going to just pick a few leaves of our basil. And up here behind me, you can see the house that Pino built. And we can get a nice view of it right over here. And what we're looking at on the lower level was the former bread oven of the farm woman who lived here in the 1950s and 60s. She baked her bread here. This is now the little room off our kitchen. So now I have, I think, all the basil I want here. And in we go into our house. And you know what? I'm not even going to wash this basil. We had a good rain last night. There's nothing better than Mother Nature washing your vegetables. Let's go in. All right. Let's make Giuseppe and Salvatore's pasta con pomodoro e noci. Pasta with tomatoes and walnuts. Very simple. These tomatoes are nicely washed. They're ripe, but they're firm. I'm taking them right off the stem. And we live on a farm where nothing is wasted. Our goats are going to get a nibble of these. Okay, and hopefully you're using organic tomatoes, as I am. Organic for everything. And hopefully you have some exquisite olive oil to saute these tomatoes and walnuts in an exquisite extra virgin olive oil. Try to buy organic. It's the best. This is our olive oil. Actually, this is our son Keegan's olive oil. He and Francesca also have olive trees in their country home near Orvieto. Last year, for the first time in 50 years, we had no olives on our 100 olive trees. Why not? An early freeze, I believe it was April, and then drought. No olives. We're hoping for this year. It's been a very hot summer. We'll see. Olives don't need a lot of water, but they do need some water. So this is about the size you're looking for in the cherry tomatoes, the pomodorini, as the Italians would call them, the little baby tomatoes, and I'm popping off their stems, of course. And I'm going to take them over to the stove, and I will saute them in garlic and olive oil until the skin splits. These, as you can see, these are a bit bigger, so they might not saute at the same time as the smaller ones. So I think I'll just set these aside. These can go in a salad. So I'm going to take these over to the stove. Those are for the goats. These we're going to set aside. And this is our garlic, grown by Pino from his garden. Look at this giant garlic. This is probably aglione, the big garlic, which is essential for a recipe which you can read about on my blog, pasta all'aglione. That is a particular breed of garlic, which is grown especially in the Tuscan area of pasta all'aglione. And it's pasta all'aglione is a pasta made with basically tomato and garlic and no onion at all used. Okay, so here we have our garlic cloves, and I'm pretty sure this is the aglione garlic because it's such a huge one. Goats, again, get the skin, and we're going to saute this whole in the olive oil, so there's no need really to cut it up. I'll just split it in half because it's a biggie. There we go. Okay, so these are going over to the stove. I'm just going to put them in here with our tomato. And I've already chopped this mixture of walnuts, but I'm going to add some of our pecans to it as well. And I think that's probably going to be sufficient amount of nuts for this recipe. How much? How many cups? There's no cups. We're not talking cups. We're talking in all Italian recipes, the most common annotation, cubi, quanto basta. As much as you need. As good as it looks, if you will. Or as good as it gets. And now we're going to chop up our basil. And the basil will be added, fresh basil will be added at the end. There we go. And I've got out some cheese here. I have a mixture of Parmesan and Pecorino. Pecorino has a nice bite to it. And after everything's cooked, we're going to season our pasta. We'll be using the penne pasta. And be sure when you purchase penne pasta, you say the two N's. You don't want to say penne pasta, and I'm not going to translate that for you, but you can look it up. The doubles are very important in Italian. This is penne pasta. And here's the cheese we'll use afterwards. Okay, so now let us go over to the stove. We're going to add olive oil, or put olive oil in this stainless steel pan, covering the bottom with olive oil. And we'll heat it just a bit. And we're going to put in the garlic. Okay, you can see, I think that this is now covered with olive oil. I've got the water ready for pasta here. Pasta for about 4 people. It's about 2/3 filled with water. And now we're going to saute the garlic right in here. Just very lightly. And have a look, and I'll show you right here. That's about the amount of garlic we want. There we go. We have a little bit of a spit here because these tomatoes were recently washed. It's far better if you wash the tomatoes, put them in when they're dry, actually. But we're not going to let them burn. I've lowered the heat. And I'm just giving them a stir. until I start to see the skin split. It's already fine if I add the salt now, and since I'm cooking with the salt, I'm going to use sale grosso, coarse salt. How much? About this much. I have to remember I'll be adding Parmesan and pecorino cheese, so I don't want to overdo the use of salt. And there we are. We'll wait a minute till the tomatoes start to split. Then we're going to be taking them out, setting them aside, and adding the walnuts. You hear that our tomatoes are starting to split. And I actually decided to add the larger tomatoes, as you can see, but I cut them in half. Okay, I'm going to raise the heat now. Tomatoes now are perfect for removing while we saute in the nuts. So out come the tomatoes, set them aside. You can see how soft they are. It's going to be the turn of the nuts. For the Neapolitans, it's the wonderful Sorrento walnuts. For us, it's the Anna and Pino walnuts mixed with a bit. And now look at that beautiful sughetto mixed with a bit of pecans. I'll hang this right up here. In go the nuts. And how many nuts? Quanto basta? That looks about right to me. We'll give it a little bit of a stir. In the olive oil, we're stirring our nut mixture in the olive oil. We just want to, as you can see, we want to get the nuts coated with the delicious sughetto, or juice we've made of olive oil and tomatoes. There it is. Does that look tempting already? And now, just as a second, let's turn the tomatoes back in to the walnuts. And look what I'm going to do. Here's my basil. We don't waste anything, do we? Oh, look what I'm doing with the basil. Sopping it up, as they might say in the United States, southern part of the United States. There we go. Let's have the basil pick up some of that wonderful sughetto. Give it all a stir. You see that nice mixture? And we're ready for our pasta. How much pasta? QB. I do 2 handfuls per person. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Give it a stir. Cover it up. We're going to bring it back to a rolling boil. How long will it cook? Oh, I don't know. 10 to 12 minutes perhaps. I'll test it, and we're going to drain it when it's perfectly al dente. And this means perfettamente, perfectly. That is to the tooth. Our pasta is now al dente. I turn the water off immediately. And I've checked our sugo, and it is perfetto for salt. So let us drain the pasta. Without further ado, shot of cold water in it, immediately stops the cooking. And in we go. And I'm draining it over a clean basin because I want to catch some of the brodo of the pasta to add to my sughetto if I need it. So we'll give it a mix. Our wonderful sughetto here. Keep the frying pan here. And going to eliminate my garlic. We'll put it over here. Eliminate the garlic cloves. Give it a stir. How does that look? Tempting, isn't it? A good gentle stir. And then into the serving bowl. It's looking absolutely delizioso, not even delizioso, squisito. It is not just good, it's going to be delicious. So when you're out for lunch in an Italian restaurant or home and you want to compliment the cook, buono. If it's buonissimo, it's two. Now let's add the cheese. This ceramics is actually from Orvieto, this pattern. The little spoon is from Deruta. Now we're all ready. The cheese has been added. We're giving it a gentle mix. And then you want to serve it hot to family and friends. And buon appetito to all.